When you think of the French Revolution, what comes to mind? Liberty, equality, fraternity, or perhaps guillotines and chaos? Well, in this episode of Crash Course, we're gonna find out how the French went from this to that. Bonjour. I'm your host, and in this episode, we're looking at the French Revolution. Part 1, the Moderate Revolution. Now, by the late 1780s, France was in a bit of a pickle. After decades of lavish spending by the monarchy, the country was broke. Meanwhile, the American Revolution was draining the royal treasury even more. And to make matters worse, a series of bad harvests had led to food shortages and soaring prices. Now, this discontent was not new. For years, the French people had been grumbling about the high taxes they paid to support an increasingly irrelevant monarchy. But up until now, the protests had been sporadic and short-lived. The real explosion of revolutionary fervor came when Louis XVI decided to call a meeting of the Estates General, which was the French term for an assembly that represented the three estates of the realm: the clergy, the nobility, and everyone else. This last group, called the Third Estate, contained about 98% of the population and included merchants, artisans, farmers, and the growing middle class. Now, the idea was that the Third Estate would come together and help the king solve France's financial problems. But instead, upon being summoned to the Estates General in 1789, the Third Estate declared that it represented the true will of the people and demanded that it have a say in how France was governed. When the king refused, the Third Estate walked out and formed its own National Assembly, an act of defiance that inspired similar movements across Europe and Latin America. On June, the members of the National Assembly took the tennis court oath, vowing not to disband until they had given France a constitution. And just like that, the Moderate Revolution was born. Now, this was not the violent overthrow of a government that we typically think of when we hear the word revolution. Instead, the French people were attempting to change their government through the only means they knew: voting. This was a new way of thinking, one that was based on the ideas of the Enlightenment and the American example. In fact, Thomas Jefferson's words were inscribed on the French revolutionaries' seal. The main goal of the Moderate Revolution was to change the government by changing the way people thought about it. But while the French people may have been inspired by Enlightenment ideals, their actions were driven by immediate concerns. As the economic crisis worsened, the streets of Paris grew more and more chaotic. On July, a rumor spread that the royal family was planning to flee Paris. And the next day, an angry mob descended on the Bastille, one of the infamous prisons that had come to symbolize the absolute power of the monarchy. It was the storming of the Bastille that really kicked off the French Revolution, an event that inspired countless paintings, poems, and songs. So, to recap, the French Revolution began with the moderate goals of creating a constitutional monarchy in the American style. But as economic conditions worsened, the revolution radicalized, culminating in the storming of the Bastille. Coming next time on Crash Course, we'll see how the French Revolution went from moderate to radical and how the Reign of Terror changed France forever. This episode was filmed at a studio and was made with the help of all these nice people. If you want to help keep Crash Course free for everyone forever, you can join our community on a crowdfunding platform.